Hello and welcome everybody to episode 4 of Dynamic Factorio. This is Jack B1024 and here is our factory. Now, you may have noticed some things have changed since the ending of episode 3. And that's because I spent about 2.5 hours getting this episode ready. So I'll quickly go over what changes have happened while you were away, and then we'll get straight into this episode. So, the first change that we did was I added a couple of extra miners to both the iron mine as well as to the copper mine, just so that we can get some more iron and copper throughput. Second change I did was to add a power line between our steam engines and our main bus so that we can get power out there. Thirdly, I chopped down a bunch of trees and started laying down the main bus. And finally, I upgraded the assembling machines that created our transport belts to tier 2, as well as making a second line of assembling machines for that. So, zooming into our main bus, you'll notice that there's a lot of circuit networks going on here, or circuit wires going on. And so we'll explain what they all do when we fill up this section here, which suspiciously doesn't have any wires, so that we can lay them down here and show you what they actually do in all the other locations. But before we go into that, let's first see the few changes that have happened to our main bus. So the first thing that has changed is we've added our crafting areas to the top, and our crafting areas actually have an output line now. And this output line comes down here, goes into this splitter, and then goes into a second splitter, which allows it to be fed both into the left direction. Yep, feeding it both to from west to east, as well as if it splits this way, it can go east to west. And this underground belt here just takes it down to the next layer, so it can go down to every layer. We also moved the entire belt west a fair bit, and that was to give us room for these lines here. So these lines here are our furnace imports. As I've said, our furnaces will be also dynamic, and so each of these lines could have either iron plates, copper plates, possibly brick. I'm trying to think. Yeah, we'll add brick. They could also just have raw iron or raw copper ore, as well as steel bars on them. And so this way the iron plates and the copper plates and so on and so forth can come up and be placed onto the line that they need to be placed onto. Now, the first thing that we had to solve is how do we determine which line any resource goes onto? And we've got two different places where we have to do this. Both with our furnaces, so example here's iron plates, here's copper plates, and we might want copper plates to go on the bottom line here. So how do we configure it so that copper plates only go on the bottom line here? And we also want it so say our copper plates are coming across this line here, and we have red potion factories up here. We want our copper plates to be able to come off this line and travel up one of these lines to go into an input to our red science pack factory. The solution to both of these problems is identical, which makes it nice and convenient. So the way we're going to do that is every line has to store essentially what the line contains, and every furnace will have what the furnace line contains, and every input line stores what it wants on that line. So at the moment I'm just using constant combinators. This is just to make this easier to get set up and show how all the logic works, and in a later episode we'll actually change these so that our factory's brain will be telling these lines what they actually are meant to have. But for the moment we're using a constant combinator. And so now there's two ways we could do this, and I've got the two ways shown up here. So the first way I was thinking of doing it is with this circuit condition. We set it to be enabled when anything equals 2. So let's say this line is our red line. It's got the red signal on it. And let's say we want to pass through items with a red signal. So say, let's pretend just that for the moment that this was a furnace line, and it was actually, let's go iron plates. So we've got iron plates coming across, and we say we want this line to have iron plates. So we give that an iron plate and we turn this one on. This is now getting one iron plate signal from the red line, one iron plate signal from the green line, and so it's equal to 2. And so that works fine. Now that's fine for most conditions, but there is one edge condition that I actually want this to be enabled for. And that is, let's say that this is an empty line and it's not meant to have anything on it. Now as you notice, the bottom one started moving. And this is basically checking if everything is 0. So I want a circuit condition that works in both cases. It should be enabled when we both are sending no signals to it and we're sending the same signal to it. So the way I thought about solving that, and the way I ended up solving it, is instead of sending a signal of 1 on one of the lines, we send a signal of -1. That way when they're both on, you'll notice that the bottom line is still active, because we're getting a signal of 1 from the red line and a signal of -1 from the green line. If I quickly just wire these up to this pole so you can actually see, there we go. Signal of 1 and -1, you add them together, that's 0, so the bottom line's active. And that's how all of these are set up. So they're all set up with the exact same condition. So, which of these two lines is the -1? Because only one of them should be. Trying to think if that needs to be there, I don't think so. So our line for our main bus is the one that's negative. So you can see this constant combinator is sending out copper plates of -1. And if we run up to our combinator up here, it's sending a copper plate of 1 because this is our copper plate line here. So here's our copper plate line, as you can see, and here's where we want copper plates to be pulled on. So if we actually connect these all up, you'll see the copper plates will start passing into this line, while the iron plates will not. Yep. And they're getting stopped from here because we don't actually want them up this way. So we've got a slightly different setup for the very rightmost area because this is where our labs are going to be. At the moment I'm not using sushi belts, we'll get to that later. But here we have a similar sort of thing. We have positive numbers for what they want on each belt. So we want red science packs here, blue science packs, purple, gold, green and grey. And I'll show how they all line up, but how that all gets connected. But you have the same sort of thing where we have, on this line we have what this main bus contains, while on these lines down here, which run north to south, we have what we want on each line. So on the left line we want red science packs, and on the right line we want blue science packs on this one. So if we actually run over to here, you'll notice here we want on the left and the right side copper plates. And so there our copper plates are going through there. Yeah, there's none coming through here because we're not getting any copper plate from the west. Our copper plate's only coming from the line on the east. And so they're going to run up. And it looks like there is a bug. Yes. Okay, I didn't actually set up these. I was going to show you how this is all set up. So we'll quickly just do that. And clean up all the mess that would have caused. That'll get cleaned up eventually. Okay, so ignoring the few stray pieces, turns out I actually put the copper plates in the wrong line. So I'm going to actually move this across and we'll turn these ones off. and we'll just pick up this, because I actually want the copper plate to be on the closer line, not the further line. So now our copper plates are actually going to start coming in on this line once we get enough, which, there we go. And now I'll come up here, that'll go up this line and be on the closer line. Just finish picking up all the stragglers. Okay. So how does this all work? You'll notice there's a fair few constant combinators here. Just as ghosts, that's actually going to be used to dynamically set what each line will have. But for the moment I'm just going to use constant combinators, and I'm actually going to have our crafting combinators here. So we'll quickly just set up a single line. So we connect all our crafting combinators together, set it to this constant combinator, which will control what all of these will be crafting. And because we want to make red science packs, the only thing we're missing now is iron gear wheels. So I'll tell it, craft some iron gear wheels. Now we actually have another one over here, connects to this one, and it's going to tell us what the output on this line is, which should just be equivalent to this. Let me just check. Yeah, okay, it's positive. Yep, that's good. Now for our iron gear wheels, we want to set what our inputs are. Now the only input we care about is iron plates, because that's the only input we'll have. And we want iron plates on both the left and right side of this belt here. Just make a few of these, not that they'll be used. So, we're going to need a lot more wires. Yep. Okay, and we're going to set up just 3 poles. So this pole will contain the inputs we want on this belt. This pole here will contain what inputs we want on the middle belt, and this pole here will contain what inputs we want on the left belt. So as we said yesterday, the red line will contain what we want on the left side of the belt, and the right signal will contain what we want on the right side of the belt. So if you notice, there's a small electric pole just above this bend here on each line. And this is the electric pole that contains the signal for that line. So we connect our red and our green to this electric pole, and we connect the red side to the left and the green side to the right. We also need to pass it down to the next line. So it looks a little messy here, but actually it's not too bad. It's all laid out identically. This top one that's right next to the splitter, that's the one that we pass it to. And then that one will be connected to this electric pole here, which is just straight above the bend. As you can see, the red line goes to the left and the green line goes to the right. And then it again should connect down. Doesn't look like it is actually connected. So we'll connect it down. And that one's not connected either. But that one connects to the one above the bend, red to the left line, green to the right, and that connects down again. So we'll quickly just connect these ones up, and this one here. Okay, that looks like it's set up correctly. So we're now telling it that we want iron plates on the left and right of the middle belt. Now the next thing we need is this line that goes across the top here. It goes next to the top splitter on the line. And you'll see it's on every line. There's one line that goes across that's next to the top splitter. And this line is what item is on this line of the main bus. So you see it ends here, so we'll just connect it across. So only this one little cell here is not actually connected. So now on this pole, we have what should be on this line, which we're not actually setting yet. So we're going to say we want iron plates on this line. And because it's a line, we set it to a negative value. Now we get our output from this one, and we need to connect it again to the same belts, but we don't want to connect the same color to it. Otherwise this green network would join up with this green network. And so if we did that, you'll notice that our green signal is gone because we're getting -1 from this line, +1 from here, and they're actually together, they're all on one line. So instead, we're going to connect our green signal to where our red signals are, and we're going to connect the red line to where the greens are. So for our line ones, greens go to the left, reds go to the right. Our line, our green and red are just the same signal, they both come off a single combinator. So now we just need to set this to the correct condition. Apparently that's not actually set to the correct condition. Just quickly set all these. There we go. So we'll set these and you'll notice they'll turn green. Okay. Now we actually need... Yep, good, that one actually reaches. So we need to set this one up as well. Again, green to the right, red to the left. And we're almost out of cables. And red to where the greens were, greens to where the reds are. And finally our last cable. We're actually going to run out of cable before we manage to do this. Whoop. Ah. There we go. But we can at least connect the green up. And what are we out of? Oh, we're out of circuits. No, we're out of iron plates then. Easy enough. It'll take some time because it needs to make the circuits too. And I'll probably run off soon to grab some more circuits. There we go. So that should be ready. We just need to tell it that oh, yep. Actually, I'm going to need some more. What? Did I make green? Oops. That was a mistake. So our red line from here, we'll go down to this small electric pole, and then we'll run it across here so we can tell these lines what they... It can tell these inputs what this bus line contains. The one we really care about is this one here. And we'll set this to our input of iron plates. And that probably wasn't set. Good. Now we can just connect that straight in. And our iron plates are going in on our closest line. Now, a new thing that we've added is these filter inserters. So these are going to be important when the output of one of our lines changes. So when the output of a line changes, what we'll want to do, actually, I haven't actually set this one up completely yet. What we'll want to do though, is we'll want to make sure that the old output does not get past this line to this splitter. So this is designed to basically, it will pick up any output that shouldn't be on this bus line, and it will put it on this line here, which will run all the way across, and it will go and get sorted over in the sorting section to the east. Okay, we'll add some output. And we're going to have to quickly run down because this isn't set up correctly yet. Let me check if any other line is. Nope. Okay. So the final piece, okay, yep, is our output, which is iron gears. Goes into this electric pole here, which connects down to this one, which is next to the left band of this splitter. It's also next to the underground belt here. And it's basically going to tell this output decider splitter what we're getting, and it will check is our output what we want on this main bus line. So we get our bus line, here we go. This one contains what's on the bus line. Connect that across. Same thing. So here you see we're getting a signal of iron gear 1 on the red line because we're outputting iron gear on this line. And on our bus line we've got a signal of iron gears of -1, and add them together you get 0. And that should be all of these except the very top one now set up. So I'll just connect it in, so from the one right next to it, connect it across, and from the bus line, connect it across, and done. And of course, because a few gears are going to come across here anyway, you're always going to have at least one item on each of these output belt lines that is going to be of the wrong type, so when you switch it, you're always going to have one item in the wrong spot. And it's getting dark and I don't have lights up there, but let's check where our gears are going. So our gears are going into this line, and if we look at our science packs, our gears are enabled to go up this way. So we'll just have to wait for there to be enough iron gears to actually go that way. Now if we look at one of our cells, you'll notice I have 3 iron pipes here. That's where we're going to be piping fluids in and out of these assembling machines for when we want to craft things like red engines or blue chips, both of which require fluids. Red engines requiring lubricant, blue chips, requiring sulfuric acid. So we've actually got a fair bit of space on either side of each of our cells. And so in this space down here, we're going to have our circuit network that will control the cell. In the space above it, we're going to have our fluid handling for the cell. And in the space on the west side, we're going to have our fluid extraction from the cell. So we're going to have to be able to handle, say, these were making blue chips, so this had sulfuric acid piping in, and then we decided, okay, we don't need blue chips anymore, but we need red engines. And so we've got to make sure that we can pipe out all of our sulfuric acid, and then start piping in our lubricant and not getting any of our sulfuric acid stuck. So that's why it's actually quite useful that we've got all this extra space to the east and west. So let's see how our gears are going. They seem to be slowly getting across. See one here. There you go, it's passed up. And actually the fact that we've got a few there. In fact, this has actually made some, it's just not outputting it yet. But yep, that's set to know what it's going to output. And so our red science packs will be coming down, and they'll be going on to this belt here. The third belt down is the one that we have for our red science packs. So if we follow this one over to where our science goes, here we go, you'll notice that our left side is enabled because we want red science on the left side of this belt. So that'll take it up to our science packs. Now, at the moment, I only have, 2 areas set up, and I calculated that for sorry about that, had a massive cough. I calculated that for red and green science we are going to need 10 lines because we also want underground belts and splitters, and we're going to need 10 crafting stations and 11 bus lines. And so it took me ages to just make this. And so what we're going to do now is we're going to keep researching, and we're going to try to get 2 construction robots because they will make the construction of our main bus a lot easier. So we'll start with oil processing, and if we look over here, our red and green science packs are still set up fine, except, okay, I can't rotate that from the map, that makes sense. I actually did modify which direction that line was going just so that I could get a bit more electronic circuits going towards the construction of splitters as I was making this bus, because it was using up a massive amount of splitters and underground belts. It uses, I think, about 30 of each for each section. But now that we're using science, we'll move it that way. And so during the break, after this episode, what I'm going to do is continue constructing this and research up to construction robots, or at least as far as I can get. And just trying to think before we finish the episode, because we've got a few more minutes. I think what we'll do is we'll look at how we're going to set up our lane selection so that it's actually dynamic and works off signals instead of setting it via just constant combinators like we are at the moment. But the first thing I'm going to need is a bunch of circuits. So we're going to need about 6 of each and a good number of wires. Now the good thing is that during the break, while the radar dishes that I set up were running, we've actually found a good amount of oil, about 3000% up to the north. So getting oil for our construction robots won't be difficult. So let's start with this one. So what we're going to do, I actually thought about this and came up with what I felt was a good design. Okay, so here we have a demo world to show you how binary numbers, decimal numbers all work, and how the AND function works on combinators. So we'll start with decimal numbers. They're easy enough to know. We'll go 135. You'll notice that these lights have lit up. These lights are for 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. And going right to left, we've got our ones column, 10, hundreds, thousands, 10,000s, 100,000s, and millions. So what is 135 as a decimal? Well, it's 1 lot of 100, 3 lots of 10, and 5 lots of 1s. And in fact, when you see the number 135, you actually kind of do that in your head. In fact, some languages even will say 100, 3 10s, 5 1s, and so forth. So what we're doing when we're dealing with numbers in base 10, and we're trying to figure out what number this represents, so we're going, well, this column is worth 100, so these combinators will tell us how much each column is worth, and this will tell us how much each column is worth counting the number in that column. So the first columns are always worth 1, because this is our units column. Now our second column, it's worth 10. 100, 1,000, 10,000, 100,000, and million. And you can see that in the D output signal. So million, 100,000, 10,000, 1,000, 100, 10, 1. Okay, so we get our D signal, which is how much the column is worth, and we're going to multiply it by our 0 signal, which is what the value in that column is. So as you can see, 0 is greater than 1, that light will turn on, that light will turn on when it's greater than 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and 8. So in this column, our 0 signal is 5, our column is worth 1, so that's worth 5. This column, our 0 signal is 3, our column is worth 10, so that's worth 30. And in this column, our D is 100, our 0 is 1, and so that's 100. And 100 plus 30 plus 5 is 135. So that's how decimal numbers work. We've generally dealt with them. This will just count up, and this is what you kind of would expect to see counting up decimal numbers. We hit 80, 89 go to 90, get to 99 we hit 100, and this will wrap around at 110. So there we go. There's 10, 20, 30, 40, and 50, and so on and so forth. So that's base 10. what happens in base 2, which is binary. This time, instead of counting to 10, well, counting 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, then go into our 10s column, we count 0, 1, and then go to our 2s column, then 3, go to our 4 column. So here you can see the columns are 1, 2, 4, 8, 16, 32, and 64. And so the simple way to know how much each column is worth, the first column is always worth 1, the rightmost column that is, and then as you go left, each column is worth the base, in this case 2, times the previous column. And the base is just the top number you can reach plus 1. So base 10, because we can go from 0 to 9, and 9 plus 1 is 10. Base 2, because we go 0 to 1, and 1 plus 1 is 2. Did I say 9 plus 1 is 2? 9 plus 1 is 10. So, let's look at a number in base 10. Let's look at the number 15. Okay, so these lights are on. Why? Well, we'll look at our values. So, in our 8s column, we have a value of 1, so that's 8. In our 4s column, we have a value of 1, so that's 4. In our 2s column, we have a value of 1, so that's 2. In our 1s column, we have a value of 1, so that's 1. 8 plus 4 plus 2 plus 1, that's 8, 12, 14, 15. 15, which is the value that we sent in. So this time when we're counting up, you notice each light here will alternate between on and off, and then we'll count up as we go. So, because this is saying whether or not our 1s, do we have any 1s? Do we have any 2s? So you kind of have, is the number odd, then this light will be on, otherwise it'll be off. That's just how that one works for binary. But that's how binary numbers work. So this is your 1s, your 2s, your 4s, your 8s, your 16, 32, and 64. Of course, each one can only get up to 1. Because if you had 2 lights on, in this column say, that'd be a value of 2, because you have 2 1s, and 2 is just this light here, because this is our 2s column. It'd be like, imagine if in decimal, we had another light at the top here. So you had 10 lights on in your 1s column. You'd be like, what do you mean you have 10 1s? That's just one lot of 10, instead of 10 lots of 1. So it works the same in binary, but of course binary only goes up to 2, or up to 1 in each column. Okay, now, an interesting thing about arithmetic combinators in 0.15 is they have these 5 new, well they actually have 6, I think power's new as well. But they have 6 new symbols, 5 of which are blue. Now these blue ones, left shift, right shift, and OR and XOR, they all deal with binary, while the yellow ones all deal with decimal. So if you see a blue one, you gotta think in binary, not in decimal. If you think in decimal, your circuit's gonna be wrong. It's not gonna act the way you're thinking it should act. So to show this, we're gonna look at the AND symbol, because that's what we're gonna be using. So here we have a 0 signal. Should I set that to 1? I have a 1 signal, also set to 1. And these lights will turn on if the signal is greater than 0. So 0 is 1, 1 is 1, they're both on. This thing will just AND 0 and 1, and output it's 2, and this light turns on if 2 is greater than 0. So if both our lights are on, our output is on. Okay? What happens if the left light is off? Off and on is off. Both of them off, it's off. And just the left one on, it's off. So what's this doing? It's saying, is signal 0 and signal 1 on? If they are both on, be on, otherwise be off. So, that makes sense. Let's change this to a 2. Well, that's odd. Our left signal and our right signal are both on, but our output is off. What happens is if we change this to a 3? Well, now our output's on. Okay. Maybe it just doesn't work with the number 2. Well, 3 and 2 is on. Okay, this is just weird. Why is it weird? Well, because we're thinking in decimal and not in binary. And this is a blue signal, it deals in binary. So, to deal with this, we're going to go over to this circuit, which is the same as the one up there, except this one is showing it all in binary instead. So we've got this circuit up here, which shows us our numbers in binary. So here's our first input, it's a 1. Second input is a 1, and we see 1 in binary. We're getting our 2 inputs, they're both the signal V, so they're getting put into these 2 arithmetic combinators. this one changing it from V plus 0 to signal 0, so this just changes it to a signal 0. This one just changes it to the signal 1. This again does 0 and 1, outputs V, which is our value, which goes into this, which shows it in binary. So again, we see the same system. 1 and 1 is 1, a value. So what happens when we set this to 2? Well, as you can see, our lights are off. And if we go down each column, it'll make sense. See, our 1's column, off and on. And if we go over here, we change these back to 1, so they're easier to deal with. Off and on is off. And as you can see, our output is off. Now, second row, we've got on and off. So first one on, second one off. That is also off, and it is off. And that is why our output is off when we're doing 2 and 1. So why was 3 on? Well, in this case, we've got on our 1's column, on, and that is on. Our 2 column is on and off, and that is off. So why was 3 and 2 on? Well, in this case, on and off is off, but on and on is on. See, 3 and 2 both have the 2 bits set. In fact, if we go over here again, we set this back to 3, we set this back to 2, and we look at the output of our arithmetic combinator, we'll see that the output signal is 2, just like what we expect to get looking at our binary version of it. 3 and 2 is 2, and because 2 is greater than 0, our light was on. So that's how the AND signal works, and AND signal works. So why is it useful for us? Well, let's take our binary representation from up here, and we're going to make it with AND signals instead. So this checks if our 1-bit is set, if our 2-bit is set, if our 4-bit is set, if our 8-bit is set, 16, 32, and 64. Now, an important thing to remember, all of these are a single digit if they were represented in binary. So if we show 1, 1 is only that light. 2 is only that light. 4 is only the 4 light. 8 is only the 8 light. 16, 32, and 64. So they're all just one single light. Which means with this we can tell which of these lights in our input are on or off. So if we go 15 in binary, and we make this one also 15, we'll notice the output is the same, because 15 has a 1, a 2, a 4, and an 8. And we're checking each light of our input against that bit. Now, why is this useful? This is useful because if you look at this, the output of this first arithmetic combinator goes into the input of the next, and so on and so forth. Now, each combinator takes 1 tick for its value to propagate through. Now, while you can't really see that here, in fact, I'll change this to, I'll keep it at binary mode. You can kind of see that it turns off from the right to the left, and turns on from the right to the left. But it's really hard to see because we've actually got enough power, and these takes 4 ticks, which is a 15th of a second. But we've only got enough power because we're using this nuclear reactor over here. So, if I remove the reactor, you'll notice we don't quite have enough power yet now. And in fact, if I add a robo port here that needs to charge up, you'll see we nowhere near have enough power. You can see these slowly charge up, and only when they have enough charge will they actually compute what they're meant to. So now when we turn this off, you'll actually see it turn off line by line. And when we turn it on, you'll see it turn on line by line, as each one needs to wait for the previous one to have worked out what the answer is and passed it on. So what about this one? What happens if we turn it off? Well, they all turn off at once. We turn it on, they all turn on at once. Why? Because all their inputs are directly hooked up to this constant combinator. So they don't need to wait for a previous one to work something out. They have all the information they need, they just need enough power. So you've got less lag with a setup like this, which will be very useful for certain circuits coming up. We're going to really have to worry about the fact that each combinator takes a tick to pass on. And they're also easier to lay out, you know, they're just one single combinator instead of having to do 2. So that's binary maths and how the AND function works in it. So how are we going to use this on our inputs here? Well, what we'll do is we have 6 lines here. We have the right one, the left one, right, left, right, left. And so if we use 6-bit maths, we can basically give each of these lines a value. So this line's 1, 2, 4, 8, 16, 32. So what we'll do, pick up these, we don't need them anymore. And I'll pick up these as well. That should be enough, yep. I'm going to leave the constant combinators there for the moment. So I'm actually going to put these one higher. Okay. And we'll set up a constant combinator, which will have our signal. Connected to the inputs. And we actually need 6, which is why we have the extra one over here. Okay, so what we care about is if anything's allowed on this line. That's the first thing that we care about. So we don't actually care about what's allowed, we just care, is anything allowed? So what we're going to do is we're going to go for each thing, check if it has the 1-bit set. Because if it has a 1-bit set, that means we're allowed to have it on this line. And if so, output it. And we'll do that for all of these. This one checking if it's got the 2-bit set, if it's got the 4-bit set, the 8-bit, 16, and lastly 32. So let's say we want iron on these 2 lines like we have here. Well, what lines are they? They're not 1, 2, they're 4 and 8. So 4 plus 8 is 12. So we'll say iron we want on the 12th, on line 12, which is the line 4 and line 8. If we look over these, no output signal, so there's no iron on the first line, no iron on the second line. There is an output signal, so we're going to get iron on this 3rd line here. We're going to get iron on our 4th line, no iron on our 5th line, and no iron on our 6th line. So that works fine, except we're getting values that aren't 0 or 1, we're getting 4 and 8. And we want to change them just to 0 and 1. So we'll actually set down another set of decider combinators, and these just check if everything that's greater than 0, just make it a 1. So we just line these straight up. And that means, if you look again, we're getting nothing on this line, so there's no signal out of here. Nothing for this line, no signal out of here. We do want iron on this line, but we're getting a signal of 4. And we didn't copy across the settings. Now we have. There we go. So we're getting an input signal of iron of 4, and we're getting 1, which is what we want. We just want a 1 or a 0. Input iron of 8, output iron of 1, no input, no input. So now instead of using these constant combinators, we can hook this up to those 2 wires, these ones up to those 2. Remember that red is the left one, green is the right one, so we're always hooking the red line to the left one and the green one to the right of the set of 2. So these 2 control our right lane, these are the middle lane, and these 2 are the left lane. And so now you'll see we're getting iron of 1 and 1, and that's what we wanted. Now let's say we wanted iron on this lane over here instead. So this is 16 and 32, adding them up gets you 48. So now if we go down to our iron line, which should be at the top actually. Okay, something's not working correctly. Let's see what's gone wrong. They're all right, that's correct. Oh, the red line isn't connected to these 2. And they're not set to the correct setting. Yep, there we go. So you'll notice iron's no longer coming in on this line because we've told it now nothing comes in on our middle line. Instead, iron's going to come in on our left line on both sides. And of course, if you wanted, you could set this to any number and it would set those lines. So let's say we wanted the 4 line and the 32 line. So 4 plus 32 is 36. So now it'll look kind of odd, but on the right line we're going to have iron here, and on the left line we're going to have iron here, but all the other lines are going to be off. So what if we wanted copper as well as iron? Well, that's easy. Let's say we want copper on this line here, on both sides. So that's 1 and 2. 1 and 2 added together is 3. So if we set copper to 3, these will now tell us we want copper on our right line on both sides. And if we go down to where our copper line is, and if it is set up correctly, which it is also not, this is not connected. No, you're connected through. Okay, why is this? Ah, it's not connected here. There we go. Now that should be, yep, good. You can see the copper starting to come through on both sides. And you can see that it's enabled on all 4 of these. So the copper will come through and it will come into our right lane here. And so when we get our final brain that'll be controlling everything, it can simply send a couple of signals, one for every item we want, basically just telling us which line that item's allowed on. So of course copper's not actually allowed on any line, so we're going to stop copper coming through here, and it makes more sense at least to have iron all on one side. Actually no, because we're making gears, it actually makes some sense to have it on both sides so that both of these inserters are being used. So that actually works pretty nice. And so that is the first step towards getting our dynamic factory set up. So I'll just pick up all the extra copper that's going to be coming through on this line. There we go. Now, as we get construction robots and everything done, these lines are actually going to be twice as large as they are now. I'm just going to also deal with all this copper ore, mine it up and ship it off so that we can build over this area without building over the patch. Otherwise, that's been well more than half an hour now. If you have any questions about how the AND function works, I'm sure I haven't explained it to the best of my ability. Just give me a comment down in the comments, ask any questions, and if you want, ask me to do, if you want a whole video on just how certain functions of these arithmetic combinators work, and I'll make one that's purely just focused on how these new functions like AND, ORs, or left shift, right shift work, and modulus. I think they're the ones that are generally less known. You know, multiply, divide, plus, minus, power. They're generally well known. Modulus, left shift, right shift, and or XOR. They're generally less well known. But yeah, so that's the start of our dynamic factory. And as you can see, our red science packs are over here, all ready to go. So until next time, this is JackB1024 signing off. Have a good day.